Better Life Media, America's leading source for life improvement, presents Tom Peters. Reimagine. Business excellence in a disruptive age.
Well, a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Reimagine. Reimagine to me is a very big word. It's the title of my most recent book. And actually, I came up with the title, stealing it like most things in life, about 2 years ago, not right after, but several months after 9/11. There was a special edition of the Sunday Times Magazine, New York Sunday Times Magazine, about the rebuilding of Lower Manhattan. And it said, "Don't rebuild, reimagine." And to me, that's the difference is, I mean, maybe it's subtle, but to me, it's like subtle like a freight train coming at you at 100 miles an hour. The reimagination imperative, a passion for passion. Writing a book is a walk in the park. Choosing the epigraph for a book is difficult. You got to find 10 words, written or spoken by somebody else, that perfectly capture what you've been thinking about for the last 5 years. And I was happy with this pair. Uncertainty is the only thing to be sure of. Anthony Mew, head of investment in Asia, Citigroup Asset Management. My favorite of the lot, however, is this second one from the recently retired Chief of Staff of the United States Army, Eric Shinseki. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And once again, I think it is an accurate and a practical statement. Context, a perfect storm. It is a perfect storm. Jobs, technology, globalization, and security, everything is up for grabs. I am not kidding. I am not using speaker's hyperbole. There are no experts. The fabulous news for all of us is there are no experts. They're winging it in the Defense Department, they're winging it in the corporate boardrooms, and all of us are winging it with our careers. And so fundamentally, the secret, which I'll talk about, is, and my old man said to me 40 years ago, don't just stand there, do something. Jobs. Headlines like this have almost become commonplace. University of California, Berkeley study last November, 14 million service jobs are in danger of being shipped offshore. I found this just 2 days ago in the New York Times from the columnist and op-ed writer Tom Friedman, and I loved it even though it terrifies me. When I was growing up, my parents used to say to me, "Finish your dinner. People in China are starving." I, by contrast, find myself wanting to say to my daughters, "Finish your homework. People in China and India are starving for your job." And I note the absence of laughter for the appropriate reasons. And if it's not offshoring, it's the technology. Every one of us in this room, including myself, can be replaced by a $299.95 microprocessor. Jeffrey Immelt took over as Chief Executive Officer of General Electric about 2 years ago. First public interview he gave, he said 75% of admin, back office, finance jobs at GE, a 350,000 person company, will be digitalized, which is a genteel word for disappeared, over the course of the next 36 months. Now, I'd been running around the country saying that 75 to 95% of white-collar jobs would in fact be reconfigured beyond recognition or disappear in 15 years, and they called me a lunatic, but I'm only a consultant. Immelt's in the real world is the boss of GE, and he says the same thing, only he says 36 months. And then the world of security. Robert Cooper is an advisor to Tony Blair, and Mr. Cooper said in an interesting book called The Breaking of Nations, "This is a dangerous world and it is going to become more dangerous. We may not be interested in chaos, but chaos is interested in us." Now, why in the midst of this 1 hour presentation have I devoted the first 6 or 7 minutes to background? Because in my opinion, you can't talk about the practical stuff unless you talk about the context in which it is embedded. This is not your father's world. Heaven alone knows it's not my father's world. My father worked for 41 years for the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, same building, same floor, same office, 41 years in a row. He thought I was a lunatic when I took my second job at about the age of 30, and now fundamentally, if you stay on a job more than 3 years, they say, "What, she ain't got no entrepreneurial spirit? What's wrong with her?" Biases and purposes. I usually have too many slides, and so I never get around to the conclusion, so I've come to the conclusion that I need to put the conclusion first. Anytime a speaker, particularly an ancient and elderly one like myself, comes to talk to any group of human beings, the reality is we are not unbiased researchers and observers. We are carrying tons of biases. And this is mine, as spoken by somebody else. The first reviewer of my new book last October, Fast Company magazine, said, "In Tom's world, it's always better to try a swan dive and deliver a colossal belly flop than to step timidly off the board while holding your nose." Fundamentally, I have spent 3.5 decades of my life devoted to one and only one idea, and that idea is business is not drab, dry, dreary, by the numbers. It is energetic, it's about passion, it's about creativity, it's about service, it's about growth, and so on and so forth, and the numbers are fine. I love profit. I don't even love profit, I love obscene profit. Because if profit is obscene, guess what you can do? Hire the world's most fantastic people and take the most extraordinary and interesting risks known to humankind. Now, you've seen this on t-shirts, you've seen it on posters, you've seen it on cards in stores, and I don't care if you've seen it 18,000 times. This is 18,001, because it deserves to be repeated. Michelangelo, the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and that we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. It is a failure of imagination that trips most of us up, not a failure to reach some finish line. Now look, I'm average at a lot of things, and I'm below average at a lot of things, okay? But I do not wake up in the morning and say to my wife or somebody like that, "Have an average day, honey." I mean, the notion of aspiring to an average day, whether you are a housekeeper or a software designer or a chief financial officer, makes me want to barf. You know, the aspiration of excellence will not always be achieved, but we know darn well it will not be achieved if we don't aspire to do a heck of a lot more than we had aimed to do. This was a pretentious comment that I put on the back cover of the book, and yet I believe it. It is the foremost task and responsibility of our generation to reimagine our enterprises, public and private, and reimagine our careers as well. Okay, a lot of stuff I want to talk about. A bias for action is number one. A bias for action was the number one point in Search of Excellence in 1982. We made a lot of mistakes in that book, but this was not one of them. What Bob Waterman and I said in 1982, and given the pace of change today, it's even more true today, is we said the number one trouble with enterprises, small or large, is too much talk, too little do. Now, as you know, we have this one remarkable institution in the United States, the ultimate oxymoron, a profitable airline. It's called Southwest. Herb Kelleher, the chief executive officer of Southwest, and I agree on the essence of a strategic plan. And I love these words of Herb's. We have a strategic plan. It's called doing things. And literally, as I said, it was number one on my list 22 years ago. It's number one on my list today. Fail, forward, fast. No screw-ups, no learning. It's as simple as that. No fast screw-ups, no fast learning, no big screw-ups, no big learning. Now, on my major slide deck at my website, there's some 1,200 slides. By definition, one of them has got to be my favorite. And this next one is my favorite of the 1,200, even though I'm using it relatively early in the presentation. Comes from a Sydney, Australia exec, an extremely successful one at that, who said that he owed most of his business success to a simple 6-word philosophy: reward excellent failures, punish mediocre successes. And now I think this is a great quote, but my goal relative to you is not to have you say, "Nice quote, Tom," but to take it literally seriously. Weird wins. I trained Jim Collins when he was a young boy. I appreciate Jim Collins as a researcher. It's just unfortunate that there's not a single word in any of Jim Collins' books that I agree with. Jim believes that leaders should be calm and quiet. I believe that leaders should be noisy and obnoxious. I was flying over to England, and I was reading the Financial Times of London, and Jim had just been interviewed on the Good to Great book, and he said, "Quiet, workmanlike, stoic leaders bring about the big transformations." Remember I said flying to London? Now, unfortunately, I haven't got a slide that shows the copy of the newspaper and my hand scratching in the margins, because I read this, and right next to it in the article I wrote, Wellington, Nelson, Disraeli, Churchill, Montgomery, and Thatcher. If there is one thing that you can say about these people is they weren't quiet, they weren't humble, and they sure as hell weren't stoic, but they did change the world. So that leads to my absurd point. I came to the conclusion a while back, innovation is actually easy, not hard. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean something very simple. Please pay attention. Hang out with weird, and thou shalt become more weird. Hang out with dull, and thou shalt become more dull. It's as simple as that. Now, I had this brilliant flash, and I thought it was one of the most original things I had ever thought in my entire life, which, of course, is why I was a little bit nonplussed when I discovered that somebody had already written a book about it 5 years before. Wayne Birkin wrote the book. It was called Wide Angle Vision. He said, the people who will lead us to the promised land are disgruntled customers, off-the-scope competitors, rogue employees, and fringe suppliers. It's not the main topic of my speech, but I hate benchmarking. Benchmarking is stupid. Why is it stupid? Because we pick the current industry leader, and then we launch a 5-year program, the goal of which is to be as good as whoever was best 5 years ago, 5 years from now. Which to me is not exactly an Olympian aspiration. As two professors said in the Financial Times article a while back, to grow, companies need to break out of a vicious cycle of competitive benchmarking and imitation. I want you to download this slide from my website and use it as a screensaver. We will read this. I'm almost tempted to say read it in unison. This is an essay about what it takes to create and sell something remarkable. It is a plea for originality, passion, guts, and daring. You cannot be remarkable by following someone else who's remarkable, as true for a career as it is for a restaurant or for a giant company. One way to figure out a theory is to look at what's working in the real world and determine what the successes have in common. But what could the Four Seasons and Motel 6 possibly have in common? Or Neiman Marcus and Walmart? Or Nokia bringing out new hardware every 30 days or so, and Nintendo marketing the same Game Boy 14 years in a row? It's like trying to drive looking in the rearview mirror. The thing that all these companies have in common is they have nothing in common. They are outliers. They're on the fringes. Super fast or super slow, very exclusive or very cheap, extremely big or extremely small. The reason it's so hard to follow the leader is this. The leader is the leader precisely because he did something remarkable, and that remarkable thing is now taken, so it's no longer remarkable when you do it. Now, it's a brilliant statement, and it requires a little bit of thought, so download it and look at it at your leisure in a quiet place. And of course, if we are seriously looking for dull, the best place to start is the board of directors, right? As Gary Hamel, the great business strategist, said, where are you likely to find, he said, the bottleneck starts at the top of the bottle. Where are you likely to find people with the least diversity of experience, the largest investment in the past, and the greatest reverence for industry dogma? At the top. If I had more time, I would show you the slide that I normally use at this point in my presentations. It's written in purple on a black background, and it says, want to see my porn collection? And my porn collection consists of photographs of boards of directors of Fortune 500 companies torn from the back of annual reports. You know what a board looks like in the United States, right? 20 members. 18 of them are of one category called incredibly old white males who are mostly famous for having been famous long ago. There is one woman, she is the human resources executive, and there is one African American who's the corporate communications officer. Some companies flip the African American and the woman. Some companies try to get away with it on the cheap and hire an African American woman so they don't have to go all the way to 2. I am not into quotas. But I say one thing, and I'll say it again later on. If the board of directors and the executive committee bears no resemblance whatsoever to the market being served, something seriously stupid is going down. Yes, applause is called for. I mean, we've come a long way. 8 of the Fortune 500 CEOs are now women, up from 1. Well, no, we'll hold your applause. I said 8 out of 500. And so I'm not into quotas. I say 10 by 2050 or all hell breaks loose. I don't know. What in the world's that doing here? Peter Drucker, the guru to gurus to gurus, said a while ago, 90% of what we call management consists of making it difficult for people to get things done. Remember that. Bless you. This is one of the rare times Peter's made a mistake. Idea's right, the number's a little low, in my opinion. Carl Weick is the guru to gurus in my world. And Carl said the three most important words in the leader's language are, I don't know. Two important reasons for that. Reason number one, you don't know, because nobody does. Reason number two is actually more important. If there is a single word that I despise in the English language, it is the word empowerment. I hate that word, because the implication of empowerment is we the powerful will dribble some pixie dust on you the unwashed. What does I don't know say? That's the real deal. I don't know says, look, I spent 6 months recruiting you. You are a fabulous talent. I expect you to go places that I can't even imagine. I don't know, babe, you figure it out. No, but isn't that what happens between a great football coach and a great quarterback, a great choreographer and a great ballerina? The coach is great, the choreographer's great, the ballerina's great, the quarterback's great. I lived in San Francisco for 35 years. I was there during the heyday of the San Francisco 49ers. The answer is Bill Walsh was a great coach, Joe Montana was a great quarterback, but they reinvented the game because both of them went way beyond what either of them could have imagined. Now I talk and I write for a living, and so I fall in love with words. And I love the word quest. I think, again, whether it's the housekeeping department or the new product development department or the finance department, we send extraordinary people out on quests, on adventures. I was in Madrid a while back, and I have this image of the castle in Madrid, you know where the king and queen live, Ferdinand and Isabella. And one morning, Ferd wakes up first, turns to Izzy, says, Izzy, I want you to come into the crown room this morning. We got this crazy Italian coming. Chris Columbus is his name. And so Izzy and Ferdinand come in and they got all the hats on and all that kind of stuff. And they say to Chris, Chris, my man, I got 3 boats. How about going off and finding a new world? And Chris goes, whoa. And then the king says, you're out of here, man. See you in 5 years. Now that's my idea of delegation. Ferdinand and Isabella had no idea whether this dude would ever come back or not, nor did they care because they had a hell of a lot of money and it was just 3 boats. Now it turns out that he invented the new world and we're vaguely happy about that, right? This language is so brilliant I can't see straight. Warren Bennis and his co-author Patricia Ward Biederman wrote a marvelous book called Organizing Genius about what they call great groups. Let's look at the language carefully. Again, not a great quote, fabulous in its specifics. Groups become great only when everyone in them, leaders and members alike, is free, look at those words, free to do his or her absolute best. Is that cool or what? I mean, is that not a huge statement? And the second one's just as great. The best thing a leader can do for a great group is to allow its members to discover their greatness. And you see, I'm a fanatic about this, because I think it's as true for a 48-person housekeeping department as it is for a 48-person new product development team, because we all know in the world of hospitality, the housekeepers have more customer contact than any group of human beings. And when I run my 48-person housekeeping department, which happens to be the same number of people who are on an active duty National Football League roster, I'm going to say to them, I'm going to walk into that group of people. Nobody ever pays attention to housekeepers. And I'm going to say to them at that first meeting, I'm going to say, when I look at you all, what I see is the Oakland Raiders of housekeeping. Because I do, right? I mean, why the hell not? I mean, what does a professional football team do? 48 shockingly oversized males push an inflated pig bladder up and down 100 yards worth of fake grass 16 Sundays in a row. Now, by comparison, housekeeping is seriously cool, and football is a bunch of crap, even though I'm a great football fan. It's obvious, isn't it? The brand is the talent. And let's stick with that sports analogy. The answer is you can spend $450 million on a stadium, but if over a 10-year period, the player talent's no good and there are more losses than there are wins, there are going to be a lot more empty seats than there are full ones, right? No matter how good the marketing is, no matter how beautiful the stadium is, the brand is the talent. Bennis and Biederman again. The leaders of great groups love talent and know where to find it. They revel in the talent of others. Only in the stupid world of business and government do we promote the best accountant to the head of the accounting department, the best salesman to the head of the sales department, the best trainer to the head of the training department. You don't do that in sports, right? The definition of most of our coaches at the professional level is they were second-rate or marginal players who were brilliant students of the game and people. That is, they were good. What are leaders good at doing? Leading. There was a guy when I was a kid, Yale University used to win the NCAA swimming championships year after year after year. And I've never seen this proven, but it sure doesn't surprise me. There was an interesting thing about their coach. He couldn't swim, but he could sure as heck motivate swimmers. And that's the point, isn't it? There's a thing called leadership. Women rule, no issue. This is hardly even worth bothering with, it's so obvious. Business Week magazine, in a special section, said, as leaders, women rule. New studies find that female managers outshine their male counterparts in almost every measure. I will say to our male colleagues who are here, it's not quite as bad as it looks. The principal study that was evaluated, leaders were evaluated on 20 different dimensions. Women outscored men with statistical significance on 18, but we tied on the other two, man. And so you got to start somewhere. Judy Rosner, a University of Southern California professor who has studied this topic for years, wrote a marvelous book called America's Competitive Secret Women Managers. Women's strengths, she says, match the new economy's requirements. Women tend to link rather than rank workers, favor an interactive, collaborative leadership style, believing that empowerment beats top-down decision-making, sustain fruitful collaborations, are comfortable with sharing information, see redistribution of power as victory, not surrender, favor multidimensional feedback, value technical and interpersonal skills, individual and group contributions equally, readily accept ambiguity, honor intuition as well as pure rationality, are inherently flexible, and appreciate cultural diversity. Ain't a bad list, is it? Now, I'm not arguing to my male colleagues that we are all total schmoes on all of these dimensions, nor that women are geniuses on all of these dimensions. What I am saying, as a statistician would say, is that there is something called a central tendency. And women are more likely to have these attributes than males are, and it is a set of attributes that matches the economy. Look, back to my old man and that 41 years in the same office, right? In the world of the past, things were stable, and stable hierarchies are brilliant devices for controlling things in stable environments, right? It used to be that when you were on a project team, it was with the same 17 people you'd worked for the last 17 years. Now, if you're on a 17-person project team, whether it's finance or whether it's new products, the odds are the 17 people work for 14 different companies, come from 3 different continents and 11 different countries. And the ability to issue an order and have anybody listen is approximately 0 with no rounding error. And it takes a different set of traits. But at least we're Americans and we can be proud of how well we do on this women's thing. Marie Wilson, in an article called Closing the Leadership Gap, in a very scholarly magazine called Foreign Affairs, internationally, the United States ranked 60th in women's leadership, behind Sierra Leone, but we tied with Andorra. I mean, that's pretty damned awful, isn't it? Now, there is a little bit of good news, I would say. Large numbers of women in the United States in particular, as many of you in this room know better than I, have continued to see their heads smashed into glass and stronger material ceilings. But starting 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, women almost as one in this country rose up and said, go to hell, I never wanted to run a steel mill anyway. And so women are now starting their own businesses at a rate that exceeds men by a factor of 7. For every new male-started business, there are 7 women-started businesses. Net result at this stage of the game in this country, most underreported business story in the nation, there are 10.1 million women-owned businesses in the United States, employing 28 million of our fellow Americans and bringing in $3.6 trillion in revenue, meaning, and you could win a couple of beers at the bar on this one, the revenue from American women-owned businesses is larger than the gross domestic product of Germany. Now that is fabulous. Educate for a creative society. I'm not sure I can do this, because every time I talk about education, I just want to stand in front of you and weep, because it's so pathetic what we do. We live in a world that begs for creativity, and what do? When the 9-year-old boy gets out of his seat inappropriately in the 4th grade, we send him to the school nurse and say, dose the lad with Ritalin from now until death. Jordan Ian wrote a marvelous book on creativity called Aha. He tells a story that's repeated, alas, 1 million times a day in this country while school is in session. My wife and I went to a kindergarten parent-teacher conference and were informed that our budding refrigerator artist, Christopher, would be receiving a grade of unsatisfactory in art. We were shocked. How could any child, let alone our child, receive a poor grade in art at such a young age? His teacher informed us that he had refused to color within the lines, which was a state requirement for demonstrating grade-level motor skills. Is that the definition of tragedy or not? Because see, here's the point. The Nomura Research Institute did a study a while back that said, of course, first, as we all know, we had the age of agriculture, now largely behind us. Then the industrial age, also fading into the dust. Then the age of information intensification in which we are currently engaged. But what they also said at Nomura is we are rapidly moving into the age of creation intensification. I mean, look, our education system is sometimes called the Ford model of education. That is, we nail facts into students' heads. And there's nothing wrong with it if the goal is to employ somebody for 40 years in a Ford Motor Company Model A factory, right? Because the deal is, park your brains at the door, dude. Work your 9 hours, spend your money at the bar, have a good sleep off, and then do the same thing over again. But in a world where all economic value comes from creativity and imagination, then this doesn't work. There was a cover story in Fortune magazine a year or two ago on chief executive officers who had dyslexia. And of course, until recently, dyslexics were treated like dirt in the school system. And the guy who ran Kinko's was a dyslexic. And I love this. When he was being just battered and bruised in school, his mother said to him, not to worry, Paul. In the long run, the A students work for the B students. The C students run the businesses. And the D students get the buildings named after them. So I'm going to give you a piece of practical advice, which of course is part of the reason you come here. Never, ever, ever for the rest of your working life, hire someone who had a grade point average of 4.0. Ever. What is the definition of 4.0? Buys the act. Has been coloring within the lines since the age of 5. Now, I don't want a 2.0 because that means you're either lazy or stupid or both. But at least give me, say, 3.5 is okay, because that says at least he was screwing around a little bit. I mean, 4.0 says this person does not screw around. Tom Jefferson, Al Hamilton, and Georgie Washington, they were screwing around. This was a little dinky-doo-dippy country, and they said, let's go after this George dude. Now, that was not smart. If George and Alex and Tommy the Jeff had had 4.0 grade point averages, they would not have started that revolution. The second thing I will do upon election as your president is I will issue an edict immediately to close all business schools. If there is ever a tragic waste of time in a human being's time, and I got one of these suckers, it's called the MBA. What did we say on that slide a minute ago? It is the age of creation intensification, right? Design Management Institute's magazine about 2 summers ago did an analysis of the top 15 business school programs in the United States. Design as a core course, 0. Creativity as a core course, 0. Innovation as a core course, 0. That is pathetic, sick. But I will say this, at least there's a good reason. One dean was quoted as saying, the reason we don't teach that stuff is it's really hard. Make dreams come true. We have a different business proposition that's arising. We used to make these things called products. Now they make great things called products all over the world. And we've got to change with the times. 2 Swedish business professors, Kjell Nordstrom and Jonas Ridderstrail, wrote a book called Funky Business. The Surplus Society is a surplus of similar companies employing similar people with similar educational backgrounds, coming up with similar ideas, producing similar things with similar prices and similar quality. So how do you break out of the trap? Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore wrote a book called The Experience Economy, and they say there is an experience ladder, raw materials at the bottom, goods next, services next, and experiences at the top. Pine and Gilmore put it this way as their basic hypothesis: experiences are as distinct from services as services are from goods. 2 examples. Jean-Marie Drew, Chief Executive Officer of the big ad agency TBWA Chiat. Club Med is more than just a resort. It is a means of rediscovering oneself, of inventing an entirely new me. Let's take one other example. There is fabulous news in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And that news is that there is not a single living human being who works for Harley Davidson who is stupid enough to think that they make motorcycles. As one of the top 5 officers at Harley put it, what we sell is the ability for a 43-year-old accountant to dress in black leather, ride through small towns, and have people be afraid of him. I love that. I love it for 2 reasons. I love it because it wasn't said by the editor of Motorcycle Week. It was said by one of the top 5 Harley officers, suggesting they know precisely what they're up to. And the second thing I love it for is that it adds up to money in the bank. The former Harley chief executive, Rich Tierlink, is a good friend of mine. I had dinner with him a while back. He said, Tom, it took me 8 long years of trying to convince Wall Street that we were not a machinery manufacturer, we are a lifestyle company. And he said, once we made that sale on Wall Street, the stock market value of Harley Davidson went up by approximately $15 billion. Is there any limit? Apparently not. 2 Boston Consulting Group authors wrote a book called Trading Up. And here's what they discovered. Whether you own a Mercedes or whether you own a Hyundai, more and more people are spending large sums of money buying things they don't care about at the Walmarts of the world. But what they do care about, whether they're driving a Mercedes or a Hyundai, they want to buy this is incredible. Washing machines under $400 saw their market share go up from 41 to 50%. Washing machines of the Duet variety, that is those above $600, saw their market share almost double in 4 years, and God help the poor souls who don't know whether they are fish or fowl, right? Because look at the center. The $400 to $600 washing machines, in fact, went down, tumbled down in share from 49 to 32%. And it's not just washing machines, motorcycles, and vacations. It's equally true in business services. They are quaking in Memphis because of the effectiveness of the repositioning of the brand called UPS. UPS wants you to forget the truck. They want you to dial 1-800-UPS, and you will never have another supply chain worry as long as you live. They have become a salesperson of experience, not 70,000 brown trucks driven by guys wearing brown shorts. And then you notch it up to what one fellow, Jean-Luigi Longinati Buttoni, former chief executive officer of Ferrari North America, calls dream marketing. He coined this nasty term called dreamketing, but it's a lovely idea. Dream marketing, touching the client's dreams, again, from washing machines in the consumer goods world to UPS in the business services world. The art of telling stories and entertaining, promoting the dream, not the product. Build the brand around the main dream, build the buzz, build the hype, build the cult. And so I'm therefore left with a revision of Mr. Pine and Mr. Gilmore's ladder. And once again, whether you are selling business services, even as an internal chief financial officer of a $30 million company, we start with raw materials, we go to goods, we go to services, we go to experiences, and at the top is dream fulfillment. In a new economy where 14 million service jobs are going offshore and microprocessors will replace virtually all the rest of us, we have got to figure something out to do for a living. In the next 7 minutes, I'm going to give you the greatest opportunity you've ever heard in your lifetime. Now, that's the kind of crap that should not come from people on stages, and my only excuse is it's true. We get our MBAs and we learn how to micro-segment a market so we can figure out how to sell a product to 15-and-a-half-year-old left-handed girls from cities above 5,000 in population. There are two giant markets which are underserved. One of them is called women. And the other one, which frankly even interests me more, is called shockingly old people like moi. Women are interesting, they buy everything, and companies pay no attention to them. Why? Because they're all run by men. Duh. Women. These are statistics collected from the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. This is the answer. You tell me what the question is. I'll tell you what it is ahead of time. What are the share of purchasing decisions in these arenas made by women? Home furnishings, 94%, vacations, 92%, houses, 91%, do-it-yourself, 80%, consumer electronics, 51%, choice of a new car, 68%, all consumer purchases, 83%, choice of a new bank account, 89%, household investment decisions, 67%, small business loans and business startups, 70%, and healthcare, 80%. And dude, it's everywhere. Look at the second line on the slide. You would think at least we'd have adventure travel. That's guy stuff. Yeah, in your dreams. 70% of the adventure travel decisions are made, in fact, by women, and that market, the equipment alone, is $55 billion. Faith Popcorn wrote the Bible on this, and virtually the only book. The trend spotter, Ms. Popcorn, and her research director, Liz Marigold, wrote a book called Evolution: The 8 Truths of Marketing to Women. For example, connecting your female consumers to each other connects them to your brand. Now, what does connection mean? It means something that women do that guys are clueless about. Case in point. The connection proclivity, Popcorn, and Marigold write in Women Starts Early. When asked how was school today, a girl usually tells her mother every detail of what happened, while a boy might grunt, fine. We agree on that? I mean, I don't agree. My 18-year-old son is not that articulate. You say, Ben, how was school today? Huh? And so we haven't quite gotten to the fine stage yet. The bottom line on this, as Popcorn and Marigold put it, women do not buy brands, they join them. Everything is about connection. Boomers and geezers. 80 million boomers in this country. That is those born between 46 and 64. We do not have the money. We have all the money. We have all the money, The kids are out of school, the mortgage is paid off, and we ain't got much time. And meanwhile, everybody caters to the 18-year-old. Let's have a movie that the 18-year-olds will love. 18-year-olds may love it, but I got the wallet, man. These statistics are stunning. First decade of this century in this country, the 18 to 44-year-olds in absolute numbers will decline by 1%. 55-year-olds and up will go up by 21%. And the amazing group called the 55 to 64-year-olds will go up by 47% in a nation of 300 million people. That's incredible. David Wolf and Robert Snyder wrote a very new book called Ageless Marketing. 44 to 65 they call the new consumer majority. They go on to add the new consumer majority is the only adult market with realistic prospects for significant sales growth and dozens of product lines for thousands of companies. And yet, just like the women's thing, ain't nobody paying attention. So, the vision thing. Gary Hamel, the great business strategist, says, create a cause, not a business. Max Dupree, retired chairman of the office furniture maker Herman Miller. Management has a lot to do with answers. Leadership is a function of questions. And the first question for a leader always is, who do we intend to be? Not what are we going to do, but who do we intend to be? What are we here for? What are we here for? Leaders are dealers in hope. Napoleon said it long, long ago. A leader is a dealer in hope. In my writing room in Vermont, I have only two things hanging on the wall. A Life magazine cover of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933 and a Life magazine cover of Winston Churchill in 1940. Churchill was a lousy military strategist. Roosevelt was a lousy economist. But Roosevelt gave 150 million Americans hope during the Great Depression. And Churchill gave 60 million Brits hope during the Battle of Britain. Hackneyed but true. Leaders see cups as half full. The great advertising man David Ogilvy said years ago, and this is pretty strong language, he said, fire the merchants of doom and gloom. One sour person can pollute a 100-person organization. The leader is not the person who can add the fastest or make the sale the best or do the best training. The leader is the person who inspires us, who sends us on quests to places that we had never imagined. You must care. Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot is a Harvard professor of sociology, half African American, half Native American. She wrote a marvelous book with a single word title called Respect. It was much later that I realized Dad's secret. He gained respect by giving it. He talked and listened to the fourth grade kids in Spring Valley who shined his shoes the same way he talked and listened to a bishop or a college president. He was seriously interested in who you were and what you had to say. We've all waited 6 months for the meeting with Mr. Big, and we get into the room with him with that 5 minutes that we've got, and he looks at us and he doesn't see us. He's looking over his shoulder at the next person, or his eyes are glazed. The definition of excellence in leadership is the person who, even if it's only for 30 seconds, is completely there for you. Now, a lot of us stand on these podiums and we charge a lot of money and we do our best to make life as complicated as we can. Dee Hock, the Visa founder, simplifies life and gives you all you need to know about leadership. PhD in leadership, short course. Make a short list of all the things done to you that you abhorred. Don't do them to others, ever. Make another list of things done to you that you loved. Do them to others, always. That's about 99% of what you need to know. If it made you madder than hell when you were an unempowered 23-year-old person, then as a 33-year-old manager, don't do it to somebody else, man. And if you follow that rule, you're about 98% of the way home. Let me conclude with some parting words. A member of the press asked me to summarize what I'd learned in the last 30 years in 2 minutes, and I was stupid enough to take the bait. And so this is my summary. Successful businesses, dozen truths. Tom Peters' 30-year perspective. Insanely great and quirky talent, disrespect for tradition, totally passionate to the point of irrationality, belief in what we are here to do, utter disbelief at the BS that marks normal industry behavior, a maniacal bias for execution and utter contempt for those who don't get it, speed demons, up or out, meritocracy is thy name, sycophancy is thy scourge, that is, suck-ups die, passionate hatred of bureaucracy, willingness to lead the customer and take the heat associated therewith, mantra, Satan invented focus groups to derail true believers. Number 10, we covered it before, reward excellent failures, punish mediocre successes, courage to stand alone in one's record of accomplishment against all the forces of conventional wisdom, and a crystal clear understanding of the power of a good story, which is sometimes called brand power. And my favorite list of all comes from the utterly, totally, completely cockeyed, insane billionaire Richard Branson, the founder of the Virgin Group. Branson's list: follow your passions, keep it simple, get the best people to help you, recreate yourself, and play. And if we read that slide by Dee Hock and we read this slide by Richard Branson, we'll probably have a pretty good life. That would be my guess. I am here to offer a challenge. The world of our 6-person department, our 1-person career, our Army, our Navy, our Air Force, the Department of Transportation, and our schools desperately needs reimagining. It needs people who dream in Technicolor. It needs people with guts. I am a wild-eyed optimist. I am scared to death of the technology change. I am scared to death of the security considerations that face us. But the thing I would be most scared of, personally, would be spending 41 years in the same desk in the same office building like my old man did. You're on your own. You got to make it up as you go along. But if you've got the passion and you've got the commitment and you've got the care, and if you dream in Technicolor, I suspect you're going to have at least an exciting life and probably a successful one. God bless.
Thanks. We hope you have enjoyed this special presentation of Tom Peters' Reimagine, Business Excellence in a Disruptive Age. For a copy of this program or any of Better Life Media's programs, visit our website at www.betterlifemedia.com. At betterlifemedia.com, you'll find all kinds of valuable life improvement information.